Hello and welcome. Yes, it looks like everybody is going to be here. Let me bring that volume down a little bit. We had an exciting week. I'll tell you about it in a minute. How's everybody doing? Welcome. My name is Kathleen. I'm here as your tech coach. Tonight we're going to talk about the things you need to think about, know, and ask when you're picking out a web hosting service for your business, because you want to pick the right one, right? It's kind of important. So it's kind of like picking the line of business you're going to be in. It's almost at that level. Not quite the same, but pretty close. So I'm going to run the intro and we will dive right in. Be right back. Aha, you caught me. I use that time to make sure that all the comments are up. Hello, my name is Kathleen and I'm here as your tech coach. For those of you who are new, the short version of the story is technology is my day job, and it's also my hobby because I love it. I love the possibility of it, and because of that, I become the person that everybody turns to when they have a question. And I realize that everybody has that person in their world, so that's why we're here. You can feel free to bring any question that you have about technology. I always bring a topic every week. We're here every Thursday at 8 p.m. So bring on your questions. I'm more than happy to answer them for you, or at least point you in the right direction. In the meantime, I'm going to get started on my topic while you're typing away there. All right, so if you are a business owner, you need to be online. Hopefully you already know that, but you may not. Not everybody is online who should be. And over the past couple of weeks, we've been talking about the different things you need to think about, the different pieces, how they all fit together. Tonight, we're going to be talking about web hosting. So in the short version, the web host is where it is the server space that you're renting from somebody else, right? Where you put your files so that other people can access them. So there's a couple basic pieces, right? You have to have your domain name, right? Which is something you have to pick out and then pay. It's really a rental. You have to have content, right? Whether you're going to be live streaming like this, and you should think about it. If you have questions, let me know. You could be writing blog posts. You could just put up an informational site. Maybe you're doing e-commerce. There's all kinds of different content you can put up, and it doesn't have to be one thing. You can combine it however you want. You could have a one-page website, right, that just tells people who you are, where you are, what you do, and how to get in contact, and that is perfectly fine. You need to have at least that. And in order to have those pieces all work together, you have to have a web host, which is the place where you're going to put those files, which makes them accessible. And then connecting all those pieces is what makes it possible for somebody to type in your URL and come to your content. So picking the web host, as you might imagine, is really important because that is the source that all of your stuff gets tied into. And it is really easy to pick the wrong one. And if you don't pick the right one, it can have consequences, not nice ones. So we're going to talk through all that. So let me bring up the screen so we can get this party started. Yes, I'm here. Okay. All right, so where we start. The first thing you need to do is the question I kind of mentioned a couple of seconds ago, right? You have to decide what it is that you're going to be posting, because that's going to impact all the other decisions that you make. Now, here's the thing. If you don't know, it's okay. If you need to figure it out later, that's okay. This is all stuff that can evolve over time. So out of all of the questions, this is the one that has a lot of flexibility, and it's easy flexibility. But you at least want to ballpark, what you think you're going to be doing, how you think it's going to work, what kind of content you're going to want to put up there, so that, whoops, sorry. How did that happen? Hang on. I don't know why we're moving. Let me fix that. Also, that needs to get fixed. There we go. So you want to have an idea of what it is, because that's going to be a lot of the questions that the person who you talk to about your web hosting is going to ask. They're going to ask about the content, kind of volume you're going to have, that kind of thing. So first, figure it out. And like I said, it can be a one-page website. It could just, be enough to get your information out there, and there's nothing wrong with that. That is perfectly fine. Matter of fact, it's a great place to start. The other question is, well, so let's look at it this way. So obviously, if you're going to just be putting up a one-page website with some content, maybe a couple of photos, directions, your phone number, that kind of stuff, that's pretty lightweight, right? So that's going to be a little bit cheaper. As opposed to if you're going to be doing videos, you're going to be doing video blogs, if you're going to be doing video instructions, if you're going to be doing live streaming, if you're going to have any e-commerce kind of stuff on your site, that is sort of the other end of the scale. So, right, that's a lot more space, a lot more bandwidth, a lot more complexity. So that's going to be a little bit more expensive. But that said, web hosting is not going to break you, okay? It's not super expensive. It's just another cost of doing business. It's like owning a computer, turning the lights on if you have a physical location, that rent, having lights, having heat, all that kind of stuff. So if you just look at it that way, it kind of puts it all in perspective for you. I guess I can't do that this way, huh? That's okay. We'll do it this way. Actually, sorry, did I? I think I missed some stuff here. I did. Okay. So the other thing, so we did talk a little bit about e-commerce. So e-commerce is, if you're planning to put product up so that people can go to your site and make purchases, or maybe you're going to tie into another third-party one that's, co-located someplace else. There's a lot of combinations on that, and whoever you're talking to can help talk you through it. Most of the larger web hosts have a service, but, pick again, if you're going to do an e-commerce thing, then that's a whole nother conversation. Don't necessarily go automatically with the one your web host offers, because there's a lot of options out there and you may find something that's a better fit. All of them will be able to either be hosted by or be accessed through the web hosting solution that you pick, so you don't have to worry about that. The next thing to think about is, are you going to need a particular scripting language? Now, I'm not suggesting that every business owner out there has to go out and learn how to code. That's not what I'm saying. There's nothing wrong with it if you want to. It's kind of fun. But if you don't want to do that, that's fine. But the thing is, you may hire somebody to do that for you, right? So maybe, you want to do this, but you don't want to take care of your website. You're going to hire somebody to do it for you. Have a conversation with that person, or if you haven't already met them yet, have some conversation with your fellow business owners to see what kinds of combinations they're using, because, again, the combination or single scripting language that might be used to control and add all the bells and whistles to your website may impact the decisions that are made as far as what is the best way of posting for you. As a real simple level, so if you're going to do something called like PHP, which is a scripting language that's used a lot on the websites, that's a little more lightweight and goes across different operating systems, as opposed to if you're going to have something that's built using something like ASP.NET or C#, which are Microsoft languages, so of course they're going to work better on Windows. So it's that kind of decision, that this is, like I said, there's a lot to think about here, but you don't have to have all the information in your head. Just go and ask the people who are going to be helping you manage those pieces of it to let you know. And again, if you don't know right now, if you think you're just going to do a one-page website, it's very simple, because it's really just going to be HTML, maybe CSS, or you're going to use a tool like Squarespace or whatever. So don't get overwhelmed by it, but do at least think about it. Have it on the list of questions that you're going to ask as you go through this process. And reach out to your resources, either your fellow business owners or the people who are going to be working with you. Maybe you've got a web designer who's going to do your site for you. Maybe somebody in your on your team is going to do it for you. They'll be able to answer these questions for you really easy, because it's a part of what they're going to do. Okay, now we can move forward. All right. As you're going through this process, one of the other questions you're going to have to ask is, oh, sorry. Hello, Susan. Let's see. There are a lot of choices these days which enable you to build without even knowing code. Even WordPress has become drag and drop. Were you here for the WordPress show? Yeah. I don't recommend WordPress to anybody who's starting out fresh. I'm just going to throw that out there right now. Also, why is the wrong thing coming? I'm sorry, Periscope. I had the wrong... I'm sorry. I had the wrong page up. I do a couple of shows. 1 second. Okay. There you go. Okay, Periscope. Fire away. Yes. So, did that actually come up? Wait a minute. Hang on. Let me try that again. I don't think that actually came up. There we go. Okay. So Susan says, there are a lot of choices these days that enable you to build without knowing code. I'll get into that in a second. Even WordPress has become drag and drop. So yeah, so if you missed the show where I talked about the different ways that you can get your website up quickly, free and or cheap, you should go back and watch that. It was a couple weeks ago. I think it was like 2 or 3 weeks ago. And basically I talked about Blogger, which would be a free option, and the pros and cons there. WordPress, which is the one you hear from everybody, but I don't recommend anymore because it is just fraught with problems. I got into it in the other show. Feel free to go check it out. The one I recommend is Squarespace. And we're going to talk a little bit about that in a second here, because it kind of ties into the hosting thing too. But Squarespace is a really strong platform. Lots of awesome templates, and it's completely scalable. So if you want to start off with something, here, let me come back for a second. I'm looking very yellow tonight. I don't know what's up with the lights. If with Squarespace, you can start off, you can pick one of their templates, put your content out there, and post it and be good to go. And it'll grow with you over time, all the way through like e-commerce and all that kinds of more complex hosting. And the nice thing about it is they do a lot of the heavy lifting for you. Actually, they do almost all of the heavy lifting for you. So go back, you can check the other show. As far as the drag and drop thing goes, yes, there are a lot of tools out there that will let you drag and drop your website together. There are problems with it. I mean, again, if you're going to do a one-page promotional site for yourself, it's fine. Go ahead and do that. If you're going to do a larger site, you start to run into issues with bloat. Like all of those tools throw way too much code at the page because maybe you might need it someday, which slows down your load times, all that kind of stuff. They're also not as accessible as they'd like to be. Now, I say this having just suggested Squarespace, but there are some ways that you can mitigate that kind of stuff. So if you're going to do that, just be careful, because a lot of the ones that get recommended, WordPress, Wix, those kinds of things, like I said, for a one-page marketing site, it's fine. But when you start to get into more complex things, as soon as speed gets to be an issue, security gets to be an issue, they start to not be the best first choice, unless you've done a lot of research. Now, there are a couple ones out there that are very, very strong, but you just need to be careful what you're selecting. So thank you, Susan. You missed the word. That's okay. You missed the WordPress show. It's okay. It wasn't just WordPress. It was about cheap and easy ways to get at least that one-page site up there, and then build off of it. And that was a couple weeks ago. But I don't even take WordPress projects anymore because I've had too many people in tears, men and women, because things have gone terribly wrong. It's crashed. It's borked itself. They didn't do backups. They didn't have their stuff. It's not worth it. And there's so many security issues, and it requires business owners, that's what we're talking to right now. If you're just a hobbyist, you want to play WordPress, it's fine. But for a business standpoint, it requires too much TLC. You don't have that kind of time to waste. You want something that you can just take care of yourself, or have somebody in your team take care of, or hire a web designer, but you don't want to have it be a time suck in and of itself, because you got a business to run. So that's the big thing for me. Okay, let's jump back. That button, there we go. So when you go to get your hosting, there's a couple of different combinations. The basics are you can get shared hosting, you can get what they call, private or virtual private server, or dedicated. So what shared hosting means is that exactly that. You are sharing space on a server with other people's websites. It's most people's starting point. Nothing wrong with that. You obviously don't have control over it, right? Because there's other people's stuff on it. It may not be the fastest solution because, again, the server is serving a lot of different things up. So it's not just focused on taking care of your stuff. You will run into problems with that as you get bigger. But again, for the one-page site, it's not a problem at all. And even for some of the smaller sites. So it's just something to think about. The private, the virtual private server is sort of like the middle tier. Okay, it's not shared with as many people. It's usually a more powerful server, so you're getting a little bit better speed out of it and everything else. But again, you don't have direct control over it, or whoever's taking care of your website for you. It doesn't have as much control over it, as much access to it as they might like. But that may be okay for your scenario. It's the kind of thing you have to talk through. Dedicated is for the high-end approach. So that is a server that is completely dedicated to you. There's nobody else's stuff on it. You have complete control over it if you want it. Now, the hosting service will also take care of things for you, as long as you've asked the right questions. But the idea is that that's when you are, like all in, you've gotten bigger, you've got, a team that can take care of this stuff for you, and they want to be able to control all the settings and the setup of it. Obviously, as you would expect, right? The shared is going to be cheaper than the dedicated because everything slides up. So it's just a matter of deciding, again, what content you're going to have, how much management you want to do for it. Is it you? Is it a team member or somebody else that's going to take care of it? Have those conversations and make the best choice for you. You can always, and with all these things that we're talking about, you can start off at the basic level and move up. That's always an option. You can start it bigger and go down too if you want to. Moving hosting levels is a little bit more complicated than like just updating your site kind of thing, because you're physically moving the files, and there's a lot of back-end wiring, not physical wiring, but theoretical wiring, as far as, so if you are on this server here and people are visiting your site, and then you decide to move to this server here, well, all of your files have to move over, and all that traffic that was going here needs to go over here. So there is a little bit of time sometimes involved. It's not tremendous. They generally tell you 24 hours, and it can occasionally go 72. Most of the time it's less than that, but just, you need to be prepared. You don't want to do that kind of a change as you're doing a big push, right? If you're releasing a new product, or you're launching a new part of your business, or maybe you're expanding your business, that's the weekend that you're going to be, preparing for that and then announcing it on Monday or starting it on Monday. That's not the weekend to move your hosting. So just keep that in mind. You want to plan that kind of change out in advance, or make the right decision going in. That way you can just stay there and not have to worry about it for a while. Alrighty. Sorry, I'm doing to keep an eye on the comments here, because comments are important. That's what we're all about here. We're all about questions and talking about it and kicking ideas around, all that good stuff. Okay. Let's keep going. All right. So when you start to have the conversation with your web host, whoever that's going to be, and by the way, there is the option to host yourself, but that is super techy and complex. So unless you've got somebody on team that you can rely on to be available for all that, you probably don't want to go there. Okay, so when you're talking to whatever host you're talking to, and you're going to want to talk to a couple, because the whole thing here, a lot of people, and I think I've said this later, but we'll jump ahead. A lot of people are very much about who's cheapest. Who's going to give me the best price? And of course that's a factor, right? None of us have a money tree in the backyard. But it shouldn't be the only factor, because it's way more important to make sure that everything else is in place. So let's talk about some of those things. As you're having the conversation, maybe write these down. It's this stuff here. You want to find out what their promised uptime is. So SLA is service level agreement. They may actually use that, which is why I put that here. It's kind of a buzzwordy jargon kind of thing that they like to throw around. You don't want anybody who is promising you anything less than 99%. 98 maybe. But what this means is, can you be sure that your site is going to be available to the people who want to access it when they want to access it? It's kind of important. So, I have seen web hosts that say, oh, we promise, like 88%, uptime. That's not good enough. Do you only want your customers to be able to reach you 88% of the time? No, you want your customers to be able to get you 100% of the time. And the whole benefit of being online is that you're available when you're closed, right? It's 24/7. So whatever time zone people are in, whatever moment of their day that they get the idea that, hey, I should go check out that website, you want to make sure it's available for them, because it's a terrible experience if they go, hey, I've been hearing great things about this company. What do you mean the website isn't available? Right away, it's a bad experience, and you're coming across as less than, and you certainly don't want that. So you do want to make sure and pay a lot of attention in the contract and all the agreements to what the uptime is going to be promised. You also may want to keep an eye out for whether or not they're going to do co-locating. I didn't put that on here. I probably should have. So think about it this way. If your website is being hosted on a server, maybe in your town, right? Or in a town near you, and there's a big storm, right? And the power goes out for your town, your whole area. Hey, Jason. That would also mean that your website is down. So a better solution is if you can find a big enough hosting company that you can afford that co-locate. So what they do is they put your information on a server in location A, in location B, location C, however many. The idea being that if location A is not available for some reason, blizzard, power outage, whatever, the traffic automatically gets routed to a secondary option. Now, the people who are visiting your site don't have any clue about this. They don't see it. But the point is that you're always available, because if it fails at one point, it takes them to another, and it takes them to another until it's successful. So that's another thing to look for as you're talking to these folks. The next question is backups. So this was one that always surprises me when I run across a web host for a client who is not doing backups for them. Expecting clients to make their own backups is a pipe dream. Now, you hear me rant about it, and I'm going to rant about it again. You should always be doing backups. You should be doing backups with all of your systems. You should do a local backup on your system. You should do a backup to a removable drive that you take someplace else, so in case, again, something happens to that particular device or that location. And you want to be backing up to the cloud. If you've got 3 copies of all of your stuff all the time, in the case of a crisis, the odds are very high that your business will be recoverable much faster. Same goes with your website. Now, it may be a little bit more complicated for you to know how to back up your website and all that kind of stuff, and the better hosting companies will do it for you automatically. Usually it's once a month by default, but you can ask for more. Again, depending on how big your site is, how busy it is, how much you update it, that may be enough. Or maybe you need once a week or even once a day. But you need to have that conversation with them, negotiate it out, make sure it's in the contract, because it is super important because things go wrong. So, real life story. One of my clients is having a big event, not this weekend, but next weekend. It's a yearly event, it's always right around this time. Everybody looks for it. And of course, because of it, there's a huge influx of traffic to his website the couple of weeks beforehand, because it's a race, and so people want the maps and the geolocation thing, trackers. It's a world that I now know a lot more about than I ever did, but I still don't understand all of it. But the point is that it's super critical that everything is available. Guess what happened last night? I came home from my day gig, all set to take the pup out for WALK. Can't say it because he's here, and all of a sudden my phone is buzzing like I don't usually hear it that time of day. And so I'm like, okay, what the heck? And so I pull it out, and sure enough, the site's down. Evidently, it's been down for a couple of days. Couldn't have been that long because I was just on it the other day, but still, it's down at a time that's really bad. And unfortunately, he's on a host right now that doesn't do automatic backups, so I do backups. So that was the good thing. We had a backup of the site. Every time I update his site, I back up the whole thing just to have it, because sometimes some of his people do some updates, like minor stuff, text changes. So I always like to make sure that we've got a backup. Good thing, because sure enough, when I went out there, something happened, right? I think that the host got hacked, because somebody had gone in and mucked around with his files and thrown some possible malware files in there. And now this was not him, it was not any of his people, because there's a log I could check, I could see. And I got on the phone with the host. Most of the time, I don't particularly like this host, but most of the time their tech support people are very good. The first couple of people I dealt with were very good. When I got to the tier 2 or 3, we were on the phone for a while as it became clear that this was a more serious thing. I was hoping that just they were having an outage, but it wasn't that. When it became clear that something serious had happened, their attitude changes, and right away it's everybody else's fault. And I'm like, yeah, no, because I can see too, and I know enough about this stuff. And I'm like, no, I'm not the customer that's going to fall for this. Point being, I'm disappointed in the host because we actually have monitoring on, and the monitoring the alarm didn't go off. So that's a conversation we're going to have. I didn't like the fact that they immediately tried to blame my customer because my customer doesn't go in there, and he's not handing out the ID and password. And it's pretty clear from what I saw that it was a bigger problem. But once I got it identified, once I was sure that it wasn't a technical problem for the host, it was easy enough for me to go in. I just blew everything away, because that way I didn't have to worry about anything that was left behind. And I just re-uploaded all of the files that I had from the backup, and he was back up in about an hour. So it wasn't too bad. I mean, it's never good for your site to go down during a prep period for a big event, but we took care of it, and it's all good, and he's back up, and I've been checking it like a maniac today. So you want to make sure that you're getting backups. You want, ideally, your hosting service to be doing it for you. You should be able to verify that they're doing it. It doesn't hurt if you can do it yourself. That's a good thing, but you want to make sure that they're doing those backups for you. And if it's not a part of their default plan, talk to them about getting it included, because it should be included. All right, the next thing kind of falls into the story I just told you. Real support for what goes wrong. Now, what do I mean by that? Everybody offers tech support. Everybody offers customer support. And that could be email, it could be chat, it could be phone. There's a lot of combinations. It usually is a combination of all of those, depending on your tier and all that kind of stuff. To me, okay, for my clients, it is not support if the answer is always, you figure it out. Okay? And for a lot of them it is. Or if the thing is, email, and you may or may not get an answer sometime this week. That is not acceptable. When you're having a big issue, when you're coming up on a big event, you want to make sure that you're able to get actual help, actual assistance from the people. Now, the other side of this is a lot of the companies will offer it, but they will want to charge you for it. Depending on what it is and how complicated it is, that may or may not be fair. You have to determine that for yourself. What I really don't like, and this was a part of the story I just told you, again, they didn't realize who they were talking to. They thought they were talking to the end client. It was like, no, I do this for a living. So right away when the problem started to happen, before they got pissy about, oh, it must have been you must have done something, it's like, no, I haven't been in there 2 months. Because this client's very good about giving me the information in advance. So I was like, no. So then their solution was, well, for $550, we can sell you this thing that, should go in and help you clean it up. It's like, no, you guys had a security breach. My client is not paying you $500 for some fluffy nonsense that you're feeding me that will magically fix it, when I know what that means is that you're going to actually go in and do your job and fix it. So that's the kind of thing I'm talking about when I say real support. There's, support that looks like support, when they start showing you stuff around, but there's real support where it's people who are like, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry, let me get in there and work with you to get this solved. Because it's not always just something that they can do. Maybe there's something on your side you need to do. But you want their support team to help you. They should be almost like a temporary team member that you can rely on, who's going to go with you along the process to help you, or whoever it is that is managing, your website for you. It doesn't have to be you, as we mentioned earlier. So push about the support. Find out what it really is. Find out what the hidden fees are. Find out what their approach is, and really check around and see what you can find out, because that's really super important. I love that, Jason. That's a great way to put it. Yeah, so Jason says, I would cry if I had to figure out some of this stuff on my own. I like being able to use a lifeline. And that's exactly what I'm talking about. If you are paying for web hosting and this is for your business, or frankly, even if it's not, you should get what you pay for. You should get that level of assistance. It is not reasonable for the industry to expect that everybody who needs or wants a website is also going to become a web expert. It's just not practical, and it shouldn't be that way. So I agree with you, Jason, absolutely. I mean, I kind of like this stuff, but that's not the norm for the rest of the world, and so that's how it should be. Hello, Mr. Murphy. All right, so the next thing you want to make sure you get, and again, this used to be a default, and recently, as I've been helping clients, I've noticed that it's not always. You have to actually ask, which blows my mind. You want to make sure that you're going to get for free, as part of what you're already paying, FTP, preferably SFTP access. So what is this? So FTP is File Transfer Protocol. So this is, for those of us who move a lot of files around, it is the most efficient way to get your files onto the server or off the server, or to check your server. There's various and sundry tools that can be used, and essentially it's like if you're a Windows user, right, and you've got your File Explorer, and you can go in and you can see where you saved your documents and where you saved, the logos for your company and all that kind of stuff. It's the same kind of thing, only you got to do it remotely, right? So that is what that kind of access is all about. Now, most companies, when we've been having this conversation lately, will be like, oh, it's no problem. You could just use our web tool. It works fine. The web tools never work well if you have to do more than one or two files. And even then, they're wonky at best. So you want to make sure, it's fine that they offer the web tools, and it's fine to use them if that's what you want to use, but just in case, for the times when maybe you need to bring in somebody to make some bigger changes, you want to make sure that you've got FTP, SFTP. So the SFTP is preferable because that's the secure version. But make sure that you've got that. Make sure that it's included. Test it, because again, it's not the kind of thing that you want to find out when you really need it, when there's some sort of emergency or big event or whatever. That's not the time to find out that the access that they promised you isn't there. You want to test that ahead of time. You want to test it every once in a while. It's also a good way to kind of peek in on your server and see how things are going. So it's a good thing to have. Hang on one second. I need a drink here. Okay. Next up. Now, don't panic. I'm sure some of your eyes went down to this and you're like, too techie. It's okay. HT access file access. Okay. So again, this is kind of techie, but it's not something that you necessarily have to understand, but your web designer, your IT person, your neighbor who helps you out with tech stuff may need at some point, as you are updating your site or wanting to do different things with it, may need to have access to that. On shared servers, very often you don't have access to this, which is why that middle tier is very common for business users to use. But you want to try to push for that. You want to try to, hang on, I have to yell at the dog. Sorry. He was messing with wires. That's not allowed. So it's the kind of thing that you want to ask for. You may lose the battle if you're going for shared access, but keep in mind as you move along with your business and your website, as you move to a different tier, you want to get access to that as soon as possible, because it is the kind of, it's a really important file as far as controlling how things happen and how things load on your website. I won't get into super detail on it. If you want me to, I will. We'll do a whole show on that. But it is just another thing to make sure that you've got on your checklist as you're having the conversation with the web host to try to decide which one is best for you. Let me just check on Camille Designs. Welcome on Periscope. Go ahead and put comments in, or if you have, because comments on Periscope is a little wonky. So if you put a comment in and I missed it, go ahead and put it back in. It's fine. Alrighty. So you know what? I don't even think I did this. Yeah, I forgot to do that today. Just gonna take a quick break and remind you that at any point, if you're watching this, later on a replay, or if after the fact you have some other questions or you want some advice, you can always reach me at yourtechcoach.net. And I'm also on Twitter at @your_techcoach. The underscore is important. So you can always, tweet at me or DM me if you have any questions. So don't be shy. That's what I'm here for. I like this stuff. I don't mind answering these questions because it's fun for me. I know it's not fun for everybody. That's a good thing. We're all different. It keeps it interesting. All right, let me go back. All right, so we've got that covered. So you've talked to your team. You've talked to the people that you hire to help you with these kind of things. You've talked to a couple of web hosts. You kind of narrowed down to maybe, 2 or 3 that you want to really decide from. Next step is go and check reviews. Don't just check the reviews on their site. Go on the web, and do a little checking around. Because if they may have a great sales team. Their sales team may be really good at showing you the shiny objects and making promises. Go check the reviews to see whether or not the company actually follows through. Check with the reviews to see if maybe the company was good at one point and has kind of gone downhill over time, because that does happen. As always, when you're checking a review, don't just react to one bad review, right? You want to see a pattern, because any company, ours included, right? Somebody could just put something out there because they don't like us, or they're mad, or they had a bad day, or whatever. That doesn't count necessarily as a truly bad review. But if you go to a couple of sites and you start to see the same things, not from the same people, then that might raise some alarm bells for you. So you want to go ahead and get a check on that. You want to find out what happens if you get a sudden flood of visitors to your site, customers to your site, right? So here's an example. Somebody I follow, their blog, recommended a local company because she went and she had an experience with them that was just over the top. They did great service. They didn't even know who she was. They just normally provide really awesome service. It was a great thing. And she's the kind of person who likes to kind of pay it forward kind of thing. So anytime she has a good experience or she finds a good product or whatever, she shares it. She's not one of those influencers. She's an author. So like this stuff, a lot of times that she's recommending has nothing to do with what she does. It's just, hey, I found this and I love it. So she did this for this one company, and it was something that I was kind of interested in. And so I'm like, wow, she likes it. That's interesting. Let me go check them out. Clicked on the link. No site. Because the hosting that they're using, and I'm going to reach out to them next week, the hosting that they're using has their service capped. And I'm sure it's been fine for them until they got this chance at international exposure and the site failed. So what does that mean? That means, so a lot of the cheaper programs will say, okay, you can have this, service for $5 a month. We'll host your files. But you're only allowed to have, and I'm going to oversimplify it, but you're only allowed to have, 100 visitors a month. It's not really how they calculate it, but just for the sake of our conversation. Maybe that's fine. Maybe most of the time you get 50, but then maybe, somebody writes a review for the local paper about your service or your products. Or maybe, somebody you don't know who's, famous or semi-famous, you're not aware that they're using product or your service, and they start singing your praises and you get this torrent of traffic. Well, it's going to go way over that 100 all of a sudden. So some people cap it and they say, if you get more than that until next month, people can't come back. That's not good, right? I mean, do you really want, if you have a storefront, right, and you're selling ice cream cones, right, and you sell, 50 ice cream cones a day, and then, somebody talks about it on the morning news and says, oh my God, they have the best cone in the world, you have to go check them out, and you go to work the next day and you've got 300 people at your shop, are you only going to serve 50 and send the rest home? No, of course not. This is a big moment for you. This is a big chance to move your business forward. You don't want people to go to check it out and see nothing. So the next level of this is sometimes the hosting service will say, you can pay for $100 a month, And then if you get an influx, you can get extra traffic, but you have to pay us an extra $2,000. I'm picking numbers out of the air. Now, A, you may not have the $2,000. B, a lot of the times you have to authorize it, which means there will be a period when the site is not available. And maybe this is just not something that works for you, or maybe the downtime is not something that you can play with. There's a lot of problems with that kind of a model, but at least in that case, it kind of moves it up. Now, this should probably sound a little familiar to you, because this is a lot like the plans that we get sold for our mobile, right? Right? The unlimited that's not really unlimited. Okay, so that's the next one. Or, you have so many minutes and then you go over and then they pound you with a huge charge. So that's another level. So some of them will say that you're unlimited, but turns out that the unlimited has a cap. I think the mobile company and the web hosting have been talking, and not to our benefit. So you want to get all the details about this kind of stuff. You want to get this all covered. You want to be very clear about what happens if your traffic suddenly spikes because you've gotten popular all of a sudden, because you don't want to lose that. That's a big moment, right? Who knows when that next opportunity is going to come? You want to grab that with both hands, and you don't want your website to fail. So this is just another example of, so I was talking with Susan a little while ago about Squarespace. Squarespace is, and I'm not saying they're the only ones, but so the example of Squarespace, and there are other web hosts that do this, they charge you a certain amount every month, right? And they do have tiers, but if you get an influx because of something good like that, or something bad, but regardless, if your numbers suddenly spike, their approach is, great for you, here, we'll take care of it. That's what you want. You want a web host to be a part of your team from that standpoint. And if you suddenly get a great rush of traffic, you want their reaction to be, here's more time, here's more space, here's a bigger pipe, let these people come through. So that's super, super important. And just to kind of put some numbers on it. So I did a little research. So in August of 2013, Amazon went down for a little while. I know, how did we all survive? And when they went back and calculated, they lost $66,240 per minute of outage. Now, obviously, that's not going to affect most of us, right? We're small, medium businesses. But it does speak to the fact that there is a financial impact to your site not being available. It may not be that direct, but it is certainly an impact, and you want to be aware of it. All right, next up, you want to make sure that hosting company is secure, okay? The story I just told you a few minutes ago. Clearly, they have a security problem. And of course, security is not an absolute. It's an ongoing process. It's a game of whack-a-mole, let's be real. But you want them to be actively playing whack-a-mole and making sure that they're doing everything they can to keep your website secure. Don't just take a, yes, we're secure. Poke around. Ask them about how it. Even if you don't understand their answers, make them tell you. Make them put it in the contract. Because you can't mess around with security these days, right? It's just, you never could. And so you want to make sure that they are doing their due diligence and they've got things covered. Okay, so tied to the flood of visitors, there's another type of situation where you could end up with your site not being available. One is ceilings, which is kind of tied to what we were talking about, where you're only allowed so much traffic. So whether that's number of visitors or how many bytes are going through, which is how they calculate like the file sizes that are being loaded, how many pages, all that kind of stuff. The other is account suspension rules. So in either of these cases, these are situations where if you trigger whatever their rule is, they take down your site for a certain amount of time. Now that could be hours, days, weeks, months, until you resolve whatever. So the ceilings we kind of talked about. Account suspension rules varies a lot. But as an example, so sometimes the lower end, like the shared hosting kind of ones, will say that you're not allowed to, just as an example, maybe load more than, 5 videos. And maybe you're not allowed to do live streaming through it. And then if you go and you do that, right? Or if you inadvertently, if you have 5 videos and you load 6, that's an oversimplified example, they will suspend your account. They will just take your site down. No warning, no nothing, and eventually they'll get around to telling you why, or maybe they'll wait for you to notice. There are other things, those types of content, hate content, all that kind of stuff. So you want to make sure that you are in compliance with their terms of service, and if you don't agree with it, then go someplace else. But you want to be very clear about it, and you want it all written out. All this stuff Make sure it's documented, make sure it's in the contract, because we're all business people. We know people can say whatever, but it's not on that piece of paper. It never happened. So be aware of that kind of stuff. Be careful about it. Make sure that you stay in compliance, because it's just another reason to get it taken down. And quite frankly, if you violate terms of service, the account suspension process to resolve it can be lengthy. So it's just not worth dealing with. Be careful, be smart, follow the rules. And you have to do your due diligence, right? So don't just focus on price. Obviously, it's important, but it can't be the only thing. If you want to know that your site is going to be secure, it's going to be available, you're going to get the support you need when you need it, that you've got backups that you can access if something happens to your files, and it does. Weird things happen. It's technology. So make sure that you are on top of all that stuff all the time, and make sure it's all part of the deal. When it comes to pricing, be very careful of the difference between the sign-up pricing and the renewal pricing. That's another game people like to play. So, they're like, hey, we offer hosting for $10 a month and you get all this stuff. Right? That would get your attention, of course. But then it could turn into, $1,000 a month when you go to renew. So be very careful, be very clear, find out what all the rules are about like that. Just basically, in a nutshell, if you hear nothing else, the way you would approach getting your cell phone plan, be even more diligent about your hosting, because it's the same kind of thing. Find out if there's any refund policy, free trial period. Sometimes you start to do these things and turns out it's not a good fit. And the flip side of that is, a lot of times in order to get the good price, you pay a year in advance. So let's say you sign up with this web host, and it turns out it's just not a good fit for whatever reason, and you decide you want to move on. Do you get your money back? A lot of times you don't. So you want to be very clear about that. Find out, is there a free trial period? Can we, try each other out and see if this is going to work? Or is there like, a low-cost trial period, if not free? And if it doesn't work out, is there a refund policy? I had a client who got very upset because the one that they dealt with, they actually paid for 5 years going in the door. And in 3 months, it was already clear that this hosting was not going to cover what they needed. And their choice was piss away 4.5 years of payment or muddle along. And that's a long time to muddle along. Frankly, in business world, a year is too long to muddle along. So make sure you know exactly what the deal is as you're going in the door. Read the terms of service. That's the thing that everybody blows by going, yes, 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 I agree. Don't do that in this case. Read it. I know it's boring. I know it's legalese. I know it's not fun. But you need to read it. You need to know. And yes, obviously have whatever other team members are going to be working on the site with you read it too. But this is the one time where even if you're paying somebody to manage your website, your web presence, even if it's somebody on your team, you as the business owner, you need to read that terms of service. You need to have that information in your head. Even if you don't have it memorized, which is fine, you need to have read it so that that little alarm bell goes off when it needs to, just in case. The other thing is test customer service. So we were talking about the fact that usually there's either, email, chat, or phone support, maybe a combination thereof, before you make that final determination. Of course, check the reviews about the customer support, but also give it a try. So go to the chat and type something in and put in a question and see how long it takes to get an answer back. Send the email, do the same thing. Pick up the phone, see, are they available 24/7? Or are they only available, 3 hours a day, in the middle of the night for you because they're located someplace else? Test it out. Make sure that when you need it, it's going to be there for you and the response is going to come in a timely fashion for you. Believe me, when your site is down and your event is going to be happening, you don't want to be messing around. You can't afford to wait. You need to be able to get the access. All right, I think that's everything. Let me just double check my list here. This is your chance to throw any other questions in, or if you have questions about something else, that's fine too. It can be off topic. That's okay. Okay, know your needs. I think e-commerce. All right, so the one other thing I do want to just come back to this. So the other thing that I just want to make sure that you realize is that these decisions that you're making for the web hosting are not set in stone. You can always scale up, either with this host or with another one. Just know that there's levels of complexity and there's also timeline issues, depending on whether you're doing it with your current web host or if you are going to going to another one. So you do want to just know that, be aware of it, make sure that you're planning in advance for that kind of thing, because it is important that you understand the impact of it, and you don't put your site offline at a time that you don't want to be off-site, right? Alrighty, so let me just check Periscope here, because I do know that they, it's the one site that I can't get into my tool right now, which is unfortunate, but that's okay. You know, nothing is perfect in the world, right? Oops, no, I wanted actually to go away. Actually, do I have any more of these? No, those are good. All right, that's it. I swear I am trying to get these down to a half hour, and here we are at 45 minutes again, but these are deep topics. There's a lot to talk about. And I know some of you have been saying, you know, I talk fast, and I do, and I apologize. But can you imagine if I talk slow? And I mean, if I talk fast and it took 45 minutes, if I talk slow, we'd be here for 2 days. So one tip for those of you who are saying, you know, that I talk fast, and it's true, I'm an East Coast girl, I've always talked fast. You can actually, on whatever platform you're on, if you click on the video, there's usually a little gear icon. You can actually slow me down. You can usually go in and change the speed. So I've tested it myself, and I've noticed that I can be brought down to like 1.5 speed, and it doesn't feel weird. Actually, for a lot of people, it works better. So I am working on it, and I know I talk fast. But if you are struggling with me going too fast, I mean, that's the other nice thing about, you know, the fact that, yes, we're live, and I love having all of you people here live, but you can always watch the replay, and you can stop me whenever you want then. That's a control feature that everybody would like to have. You can stop me, you can rewind, and all of that works, so it's really nice that way. Okay? All right, everybody, I hope you're having a good week. We're that much closer to the weekend, and we will be back here next Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And always, you can bring other questions about other tech topics, but I always bring a topic so we have something to talk about. For those of you who are interested, I will be on Twitch tonight. What time are we at? Yeah, so probably 9:30, 10 o'clock. And I also do Twitch on Friday nights. So if you'd like to go check that out, if you're curious about Twitch, I'm your tech coach over there too. So feel free to come on by. If questions pop up, we have random tech conversations over there all the time. All right, everybody, have a good one. Thanks so much for coming by, and I hope to see you next week. Have a good one.